Just in case Tom forgets his bell next time, we'll be ready. My name is Martha Mullen, and Tom, our fearless leader, is with Isabel in Colombia. So I'm going to be starting us off. And this is Richmond Ions, and we've been going for how many years now? 27, I think. And it was started by it's based in Petaluma, California, and it's IONS is the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And it was started by Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, after he had a unity consciousness experience coming back from the moon. And we try to continue having unity consciousness experiences every month by having different speakers. And I will introduce our speaker in a moment, but first we're going to have a meditation, and Susanna Calvert is going to lead it.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here with you all again. If you wish, you can close your eyes and plant your feet firmly on the ground. And just take a deep breath in. And just slowly start with your chest and feel the energy in the center of your chest. A warm glow. Just sit with that for a minute. Just feel it penetrating the walls of your chest and radiating out. Feel how it animates your tissue and flesh. Feel how alive you are where that energy resides. Feel those tissues relax and release any tension or stress you may be holding. And when you're ready, start to imagine that energy just being a little wider, a little broader as it reaches the muscles and bones of your neck and your belly. And of your head. And of your hips. Feel how alive and animated they are, and allow that release to happen. And what replaces the stress and tension is calm and clarity. And if you need to take a big breath to release that stress, go ahead. Now imagine that energy now filtering down to your legs, your thighs, your knees, your calves and feet. Releasing tension and stress. Allowing in peace and calm, clarity. Vibrancy. Now your body feels like one vibrating unit, sending out a signal of love peace, and oneness. And allow yourself to feel that energy coming in too. Take another deep breath and breathe out any remaining stress and tension. And just feel one with that energy of love and peace. Set the intention to carry that forth in your day. And when you're ready, you open your eyes. Before I hand it back over to Martha, I just wanted to remind you all that on the first Wednesdays of the month, Richmond Ions partners with the Sanctuary of Earth at 7 p.m. the first Wednesday, so it'll be March 1st in this case. And we focus on the practice of spirituality as opposed to the science of spirituality. So we feel it's a wonderful complement and adjunct to what we do here at Ions. Hope you'll join us. It's on Zoom, and you'll get a notice in your email like usual. And there's a little flyer going around the room here in the church.
Thanks, Susanna. I'd like to introduce this morning's speaker, Marta Tice. Marta has written a novel which she has brought with her and will be presenting after her presentation, but she has recalled several time streams from other lifetimes and had interesting experiences with that, and almost overwhelming, and I will let her explain that to you. She's a very interesting person, interior designer, and also an accomplished what do you call someone who rides a horse? I don't know. Equestrian. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So I love horses, but I maintain a distance. But anyway, it's very interesting, and I will let her tell you her story. Come on up. Thank you.
Well, it's such a beautiful day, and driving here from Wintergreen, the sun is out, and I see the jonquils coming up, and the weather's turning around. Everything's just beautiful, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here with like-minded people, and that I'm supported in that community. And so I wanted to show you a film first, and then we will proceed with my discussion about my talk and my journey. I do have a cough. It's more or less related to allergies. So if I grab a bottle, it's not liquor. Maybe it should be. And cough syrup. And but I get this every spring. So that tells me spring is here. Thank you. And we'll have a view of the film right now. Thanks, Dan. Then
venture back in time on a journey with an Alsatian ingenue, Anneliese Tice. This young woman evolves into a brilliant and beautiful character, navigating through mystery and intrigue in the wine regions of Alsace-Lorraine and the Pfalz, Germany. The year is 1805. Napoleon Bonaparte is rampaging across the eastern regions of Germany. The Tice family appear to be loyal citizens of Napoleon. However, more is going on behind the scenes. The young protagonist is influenced by the Napoleonic political views from her mother and her devious uncle, Gustave, both former Parisian aristocrats who escaped the French Revolution. Despite her mother's attempts to influence her daughter, Anneliese's heart lies with her father's teaching. Count Karl Tice, a scholarly Freemason, is instrumental in teaching his daughter the philosophies of the Enlightenment and the American founding fathers. Inspired by these teachings, the young heroine becomes aware that the French Revolution's values of liberty, equality, and fraternity are not being realized under Napoleon. Anneliese experiences the former glory of the French aristocracy when her family visits a distant cousin in Bavaria. It is there she meets the awe-inspiring Madame Germaine de Stael, a feminist author and philosopher and enemy of Napoleon. Anneliese is further inspired when she hears a piano performance by Beethoven. Another journey leads her to the simplicity of a winery and brewery in the Pfalz, Germany. It is there she connects with her German heritage and its pastoral lifestyle. She intends to discover her purpose, becoming confident in her allegiances to both Germany and Alsace. However, the plot takes a new twist, and soon her allegiances become tested when she falls in love with a dashing French soldier, Captain Hans Roster, at a ball in Strasbourg. The mystery unfolds when she later discovers the truth about him, and her destiny soon becomes linked to his. From ballrooms to battle scenes, this spellbound story will keep you engaged with each chapter. Mystery is the seed of imagination. The author's ancestral village is Liesel, Germany, where her book came alive for her. Allegiance to Alsace. Order your copy now.
What are your thoughts? I have great aspirations. Is it okay to start, Dan? I'd love to see this in a film one day. And, you know, it's a very historical romance set during the Napoleonic times. So for me, it became a journey. It started when I was 14, and I was visiting Germany with my parents. And that was, gosh, we won't talk about the year or when it was, but anyway, he was over there reminiscing about his duty in World War II and what an experience it was for him. And we visited his cousin, and so we went to Nuremberg, and we finally left there to get away from that negative energy. I think at 14, I felt it. So we took a drive through the countryside, and then it was a beautiful day. And then we went to this little village. It's a perfectly preserved village, Rothenburg. I don't know if any of you been there in Germany. It's way back from the 15th century. So I was just in awe walking around, and I thought, wow, this is like Disneyland, only better. And then I saw the clock tower, the time on the clock. The two guys came out and the hour, the hammers and what have you. And I was mesmerized. I just thought, this is so cool. And then we took another drive, and we all rented a little car, and we stopped at a church not far from there. And I walked in, and I felt this incredible connection with the altar, this wooden altar. It was Mother Mary's life and depictions of the Annunciation. And anyway, so I had to sit down. I mean, here I am, 14. I go, what is going on? So then later, I asked my mother, I said, do you believe in reincarnation? And she goes, well, you should talk to your father about that. So I thought, okay, well, and then I thought, nah, I'm not going to ask him that. It's too crazy. But later on, when we got back to America, I started reading the history of Germany, and I couldn't get enough of it. So then later I watched the movie Patton, and then studied that he loved, or he was so attracted to reincarnation, and that he would talk about his past lifetime battles and being on the battlefront. So then I thought, well, my dad was in the Army. I think I'll go ahead and just talk to him, ask him the question. So I did, and he was like, well, yeah, no. And here he is, a neurosurgeon, and he didn't want to say, oh, yes, right. He said, let's just say I believe we carry the memories of our ancestors in our DNA. And so with that, I got very excited to read about my ancestry. And then I read so many books on, just Napoleon, and my parents had they had a picture of a book in the library. I mean, they had a book on Napoleon with the history, and the pictures were fascinating, and I couldn't get enough of it. And here I am, probably 16, and I thought, what's going on? And then, so it just kept escalating, and then I mean, it got to the point where my brother and I were using a Ouija board, which I wouldn't recommend to everybody, but it specifically gave me a date. I said, did I live before? And it kept going 1789. And I thought, oh yeah, that's a French Revolution. So again, I had synchronistic events where I'd meet other authors, or I'd see books, War and Peace, and, that time period. So I thought, well, this is really cool. And then years later, I went to American University, and I studied history of art, and became fascinated with that period of time and the history of the furnishings and all the drama that went on through it. So, and then when I was during college, I was at Swannanoa, took a side trip there. And I was so amazed, number one, how beautiful, and the energy of that place. It's just incredible. And I only lived 10 minutes from there. And I felt like this is like, will put me on the path. And so I did a lot of meditation at that point. So, but then the ultimate was when Leo Russell walked down cascaded down the steps. Welcome to Swannanoa. And she was all dressed up in a blue gown, and I just went, whoa, she's cool. I think I was probably 20 years old or something. And then she told me about her book, Why You Cannot Die. And I thought, well, finally, someone has written a book on this. So I expressed to her my interest for reincarnations, and she goes, well, my dear, if you have a story, you should tell it. Just write about it. So boy, that got me jazzed up. So that was very exciting. And then as time went on, I actually had finally a past life regression, and this was with Roxanne Louise, and she I tuned right into that lifetime. And then I really got jazzed. So at that point, I started writing an outline and saying, okay, this happened, this, and I checked it with the history books. And so then it just kept going on. And then I thought, I've got to go back to Germany. I said, this is what, when I get a recognition of a place, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this, you get a chill. And I call it getting a hit. So sure enough, I went back. My daughter was, in 2006, my daughter was going to college, summer abroad in Belgium. So I said, this is the time to do this. So I flew over and we connected and we got a train down to Vienna. My mother was a music person and she was there once. So we drove, actually we took the train and we went to Vienna and went around and saw the sights. And then when I went to Schönbrunn Castle, or it's not a castle, it's an estate, and Napoleon took that estate over as well as other estates. I mean, when he got the power hungryness and he just took over everything that he could. And then it was amazing. I was walking through the palace and there was a picture of Josephine and I just looked at her and I went, whoa, I know I've met her before. I know. So it's in my book. But then after that, we took the train up and she went back to her school program and they were going to do a tour of Alsace-Lorraine. And I was lucky I had rented a car and they said, you can't go on the bus. You have to, follow the bus. So I did. We'd stop along the way at these little towns and I was in Aubernay and I looked up and I saw storks everywhere. And I thought, this is really cool, about the story. No wonder nursery, stories develop this way, and with the storks and the magical towns, and so that was really nice. And then I took a little drive, and I went through the countryside, saw an old barn. I said, yeah, this is good. And then the final kicker of that trip was when I went to the Falls. I just stopped in. This is where the synchronicity stepped in. I went into a church and I said, oh, I'm on my way to find the genealogy center. All I know is that Jacob Tice came over on the ship Sally in the late 1700s. So with that, I got in the car and drove through the Black Forest, and it was so beautiful. It was hot, though. It was a summer day. And so here I am, no GPS, only a road map, and this was 2006. I could have had access to one, but I don't think cars at that time had it. And I'm going into Kaiserslautern, where the ancestral village is, or it's a town. And I thought, oh my gosh, no map, how am I going to find it? So this woman is walking down the street and I pull over and I said, excuse me, I'm trying to do you speak English? Oh yeah, I lived in America, sure, for a number of years. And she told me where to go. So I went to the genealogy center and it was hot and there was no air conditioning. But I walked all the way to the top floor. And he says, oh, I'm going to lunch right now. And no, you don't know how many thousands of miles I came. But anyway, to get here. So we did discuss later. I came back and he says, well, I haven't really seen or found anything. I'm sorry. Oh, wait a minute. There's one more book. So he went in the back and he came out and he put it down and said, here it is. Tice family in Lysel, Germany. So I said, well, how far is that? And he said, about an hour and 15 minutes. And he said, well, you can go through the Black Forest of the Autobahn. Well, I took the Autobahn. I had to get there. And And it was just magical. I mean, here I come, this little village. There's maybe a half a dozen or very few houses, and they all have thatched roofs and the timbers. And I thought, well, this is going back for sure. Well, I went up to the cemetery, and it was so gorgeous. And there was a church. The church had just closed. So I thought, oh, how did this happen? But then I went and walked in the graveyard, and it was so ethereal. I mean, it seemed like there were moss on the trees, like it was in New Orleans. I don't know what kind of moss it was. It couldn't have been what was in the South in America, and there were Tice graves everywhere. And then I was just stunned, and I just thought, oh my God, I can't believe this. And it was such a high. I've never felt that in my life, except when my daughter was born, maybe. But still, it was a magic moment. And when I got back to the US, I really started getting into the book. And it just started taking off. And then as time went on, I thought, well, I've got to find a publisher. And so I found a hybrid publisher, which they want money up front, but they help you through the process. So I learned a lot. It was BQB Publishing. So, but just throughout time, it just got more and more interesting, and there were more synchronicities. And then COVID happened. And that's when I hunkered down, and I said, okay, it's time to get this done. And suddenly I was lost, not in the year 2020, but I was lost from 1798 through 1807. And I listened to the music, and I listened to, I was so attracted to the music, and just everything was so uplifting. I mean, I would hear that, and I would sense. And then I had another regression with Joanne DiMaggio. And tomorrow I'm going to have a regression with Carol here. Maybe those are sequel, right? So anyway, it just really came together. It just, all the details, all the towns. I was able to name towns. I was able to name what I was wearing and give more description and more description. So, and that's put me on the path. So, any questions? I have something to pass around, and it's just a step-by-step on if you're interested in writing or finding a journal of the past life, the steps to go through that I went through. But any questions?
So we'll have a mic open in this room, and if anybody on Zoom wants to ask a question, put your electronic hand up so I can see it.
Fascinating story. And of course, as a regression therapist, I always want to know, what did you learn? What was the lesson that you learned in the story?
Well, I think really for me, it was the ancestors. That's really kicked in for me, and they became alive for me. And through the whole process, I thought, it gave me a sense of connection with the past. It gave me a groundedness, just knowing about my ancestors. It gave me a sense of accomplishment and understanding of who I really am. I mean, so that was the journey. Any more questions? Yeah. Oh, good. Here.
My first question is, I'm sorry?
Get closer.
Have you tried looking at your past lives without someone helping you? Is my first question. And my second question is, did your dad ever open up about past lives?
Well, no, he didn't. But when he passed away, but then when Eben Alexander came on the scene and shared his experience with the world, I thought, okay. And it sort of solidified in my mind, all right, my dad was he was a neurosurgeon, and he believed in the DNA. But for me, it was just he never really did open up. I think at that time, you don't talk about woo-woo stuff. And he had to be scientific. But then that took me further to study Brian Weiss and do a lot of reading on the subject. But there's still times when I'll walk around or I'll get a hit about something or music will come on. I'm sure a lot of you have gone through this, where you've experienced something and it just made you stop in your tracks. Does anyone want to share that? I would love to hear about it. Okay, please.
That's kind of why I asked you that question, because since I was young, I've remembered past lives.
Uh-huh.
And so nobody regressed me. I just would,
Yes.
sometimes there would be sort of a hit, as you call it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would be a fascination, or sometimes it would be fear. Sometimes I would be
Yes.
gripped in fear, and I would say,
Yes.
"Oh my gosh!" And
Yes.
it would connect to that where that
Right.
past life came from.
Right.
But to me, there's no veil between the past and
Okay.
me now. So,
Right.
and so that it's, I don't feel that's a unique ability. I really feel that everybody has that.
I think so. And so many people, as we know, just turn it off, shut it down. And, I think what's really important is when you're young, if you have children and they talk about when they're, before they're 6 years old. And of course, Ian Stevenson at UVA did, 30 years study on all the children that went back. And my daughter, I know I was, when she was born, I thought, oh, I was on high alert about that. Just listen to everything she says. I lived in a little town of Lovettsville in Northern Virginia at the time, and they had a fire department, and it sounded like a World War II air raid going off. So she pulled my pants leg and said, "Mama, quick, come hide, the planes are coming." And I asked her later, and she loved tea, and she loved watching British shows. And then she just shut it down. No, I don't believe in that. Because, Mom believes in it, but I don't have to. But anyway, that signaled a lot for me. And in fact, I had an experience in this lifetime being at the doctor's. I think I was only 3 years old. And I had a connection, a vision of being in World War II. And then I realized growing up, my father had PTSD. He came home from World War II. He's gone 3 years. Talk about cutting off legs and seeing major atrocities. And that kind of infiltrated the family life. But we won't go there. That's PTSD. But anyway, I think, and on the sheet I passed out, it gives advice on how to find this. And if you know your genealogy, if you know where your ancestors came from, then what you want to do is go there if you can. And maybe it won't have to be Europe, or maybe for me it kind of put everything in place. So if you can do that, keep doing regressions and find the music you like, the food you like to eat, what resonates with you. So
I'm curious, how were there pieces of your regressions that made it into the book?
Yes.
The storylines, and maybe you
Yes.
could share one or two of those things.
Well, let me think. One of the things that occurred for me, you just asked me physical conditions or any kind of story. Okay. Well, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I really felt it's somebody's trying to talk to me. And I felt like, and then the whole thing with the main character, Annalise, said, yeah, okay, I was her, and I was pregnant, and I was worried, and that really brought it to the surface. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Anyway.
I have a question.
Sure.
Unless, is there somebody online who has a question? Okay. So your dad, William Preston Tice, he was a neurosurgeon. And I was reading on the flyer that he believed that our memories or our past lives
Right.
are in their DNA. I wasn't quite sure. Can you expand on that? a little?
Yeah,
That's really cool.
and I talked to Evan Alexander about this, and he totally agrees that we do. I mean, we, as you know, we inherit our traits, our hair, our, facial expressions, what have you. We all inherit that. So why not the DNA? Think about it. I mean, it's there at birth, and it just grows with you over time. That's what he believed in. He would not expound on that, but after seeing Eben Alexander, I really got closure from that, saying he was on the right path.
Well, that's what happens with butterflies, monarch butterflies.
Okay.
When they migrate, part of them die off, and then
Right.
the offspring. And so it's like, I think it's called a monarch effect. How do the offspring know how to go back where
Exactly.
the parents came from? And
Exactly.
they think that that's part of their DNA.
Oh yeah, I mean we do. I mean memory is, and then phobias. I don't have to tell you guys about all this because you're fearful. I'm fearful of a parking garage crashing on me. So I obviously was in an earthquake at some point. Hi.
Hi. I'm very open to the idea of past lives. Myself, I've had a couple regressions and a couple of intuitive hits.
Okay.
In one case, I was a kangaroo. And in another, I was a frog.
Oh,
In another, I was some kind of feline.
really?
And in another, I was a farmer somewhere in medieval Europe.
Yeah.
And in another, I was a retarded child in
Oh.
a farm household.
Mhm.
And they seem quite real to me.
Yes. Mhm.
But what now occupies my interest is the idea that we have this whole notion of past lives filtered through some kind of belief system that has a lot of assumptions, like
Sure.
the fact that the idea that we are a single entity, individual that has continuity across time. What makes me wonder about these assumptions is the perhaps illusory aspect of time, and that it is not as we suspect, and that we have access to all time, past and present and
Yes.
future.
Yes, that's
And the other aspect that makes me wonder is the aspect of non-duality, where we are intimately connected with all that is, and therefore have access to all points of reality. And so I'm trying to understand past life regression through a broader sense of perception. And
okay.
if anyone has anything to say on that, I'd be very interested.
Well, nothing comes to mind right now when you brought, but I think sometimes our affiliation to animals, like I was a horse, and dog, and that was obviously prevalent in this book. For me, I've never really had personally a connection with being an animal and another life, but I certainly can think that it's possible, and there is a duality with time. I've often thought of rewriting this book so that I start out in the present, and then the memories come and twining this together. And so much, actually, when I was writing this, I was there. I'd be in the present, and then I'd be in the past, and then I would hear the music, and it would go through my mind all day. And I was really, in a way, time traveling, or there was that duality for me. So absolutely. Anyone else? Oh, good.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that old Christopher Reeve movie.
Yes, Somewhere in
Yes,
Time. One of my
Somewhere in
favorites.
Time,
One
yes.
of my favorites.
Yes,
Yes.
that is so worth seeing, and we might
Yes.
see it at Unity Church.
Yeah.
It is a good one. So I have another question. So you're talking about past lives, and you're talking about your ancestors. Have you attempted to contact them directly?
I work with someone that channels my ancestors, and it's mainly for the immediate family, but he can access my spiritual guides, and but I don't have specifically anyone that I can. I'm sure you probably all know of someone that you could talk to that could tap into that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, you gave me an idea because I know about my ancestors because there's actually a book written about my ancestors.
Well, that's good. That's
Yes,
Cal.
it's called Hopkins of the Mayflower.
Wow.
Yeah, so it goes way, way, way back.
Yeah.
And that might be an interesting thing to tap into.
Have you ever been to their gravesite, or, specifically where they, you might want to go to New England and research that?
Well, that would mean crossing the big pond.
Yes, I know, I
That could
know.
be
Who wants to
fun.
travel these days?
It could be fun.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
well, thank you.
You're welcome. Any more comments, questions? Oh, okay.
So I have an interesting etiquette about past lives.
Okay,
I have a memory of having been to this planet many times,
okay.
but each time I make an effort to dissolve my identity construct before I die, so that I
Okay,
leave
that's
nothing
great.
behind.
Yeah.
And it's funny that I remember this somehow. So it's as if I've never been here, even though I have been here.
Right.
And in this life, I plan to do the same thing, but if I die suddenly and unexpectedly, I won't be able to.
I think
So-
you're wise about that.
Oh, thank you. I was wondering
I
what you
think
thought
that's
about
really
that policy.
good. Yeah, no, I mean, start thinking about what you have learned in this life and what you want. And they say you can almost project, I haven't studied it enough, but you can project what you want in the next one. You can program it, pre-program it. Yeah. Hi.
Ryan, I really like your idea there. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. There's another assumption about reality
Oh,
I think we ought to bring into the
Okay.
discussion, and that is that we are essentially a single individual that has individuality that continues across time and space.
yes.
Recently, I found the notion, I'm not saying I believe this, but I'm just willing to entertain it, the notion that we are not necessarily, I don't know how to express this, always absolutely an individual entity, that we can fragment. And the notion came in the form of what was called overlap, where in any particular incarnation, our conscious awareness, our consciousness may overlap with that of another. And thus the new incarnation may be a combination of consciousnesses from prior experience.
Wow.
And in
that's
this
a-
way, multiple people can say that they have been Napoleon, and say
Yes,
so
yes.
legitimately.
Sure.
Or Thomas Jefferson. I know
Right.
one guy who says, yeah, I was Thomas Jefferson, but so were several others.
So you're saying
And so
that
it goes.
they kind of split
Yeah, kind of like
And
a
then when they
split.
remerge again to
Yeah,
come back, that they're
right.
different fragments of
Different
different?
combinations
Oh, that's
of conscious
interesting.
awareness.
Yeah, does anyone know about that? I know nothing about that, but it sounds pretty interesting there.
And another aspect I think that we need to keep in mind is that we are immortal,
Yes.
and that we have experience, vast experience, almost like you could say all the experience that is
Yes.
across time and space,
Sure.
which is, and it makes me think that, we're probably, at essence, we're just experienced junkies. We're just really to hop into whatever new experience there is available because we want to experience it.
Oh, that's a great concept.
I don't really know anything about anything, but what is coming for me has to do with a video I watched recently about quantum physics, and it was by
Okay.
the scientist at CERN.
Okay.
And he talked about like that an electron from one item is absolutely indistinguishable from as a electron from another, and it goes into and out of this sort of the quantum field.
Okay.
And so, my feeling I get when I'm hearing this conversation is that we're like an electron, and we go into and out of this quantum field, and we can access different parts of our consciousness, either maybe on a certain thread or lineage, but we can also hop around. Like I feel like I had a memory of someone that wasn't even me,
Okay.
and so and that so we can hop to a frog or a different dimension, or just stay within our genetic lineage. That's just what's coming to me.
Okay, thank you. That sounds, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, this is a really interesting conversation that's been coming up. And one thing that enters my mind is perhaps we may have past lives that overlap. When you were talking about overlap, we could actually probably be two different people at the same time on this planet, because space and time is kind of, but I just wanted to bring in the more spiritual sort of yoga perspective of this as well, when you think about karma, and about how their one perspective is we are here to learn things and to
Yes.
advance in our enlightenment,
Yes.
to get to the point where we don't come back anymore and we are an
Right.
enlightened being.
Right.
And so many times we're here in the same sorts of scenarios, re-experiencing, trying to learn what we need to learn to be able to move beyond them. And so, these past life regressions give us a window to those lessons
Sure.
that help us to maybe solve the puzzle during this time
Yes.
and move to that next level. So I just wanted to
Right.
bring that up.
It's very true. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm gonna try to explain this as clearly as I can, but I have never had a regression done with
Sure.
anyone who facilitates that process, but I have a knowing that I have not had any past lives on this planet Earth.
Okay.
Although I had this moment, excuse me, that you called it a hit one time, and I had this vision of a Native American medicine woman who got
Ah.
really horribly killed.
Oh dear.
So it doesn't feel like it was my life, but it had a message for me. So
Sure.
going back to what Susanna mentioned of like we can hop
Right.
around and like experience other people's the experiences, in my mind, and I'm trying to explain these two contradictory things to myself, I felt like sometimes we receive this information to help us move forward with what we need to do, and like the mission we have here and all of
Right.
that. And it may not necessarily be a past life,
Right.
but also could be something that just is
Sure.
helping us understand something. I
It
wanted
helps
to
you
know your
resonate.
take.
Yeah.
Mhm. Or anyone else if
Yes, thank you.
So we have We have Sasha on the internet, had her hand up. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Sasha. Go ahead, speak.
Oh. Are you familiar with Doctor Who and the Time Lord and his ability to regenerate? I know it's fictional, but do you believe in the regeneration process? And there is some science to this. I believe
Yes.
at University of Nevada, Reno, they are
Yes.
actually offering a major where they study the ability to regenerate. And I have a second question. When I practice some shamanism,
Okay.
and when I look at some people, when they ask what their spirit totem is, can the spirit totem remain constant between lives as they
Oh.
regress?
Yes, most definitely. Your totem can be with you, it carries, you resonate it. I mean, I can remember when I was small and touring an Indian village and seeing a totem pole and then just having kind of a flashback or hit, whatever. Oh, well, I was a fox, or, and anyway, I do think that it gets back to the DNA and the cells regenerating. Is that's part of biology, and it makes sense to me. And I think anyone who is in the medical doctor world, that's what they cling to. They realize, oh yes, it's in your genetics. So I hope I answered that. Hi.
Hello. I wanted to just throw my own experience in there
Sure.
to add to the gentleman who said that he was an animal or different kinds, because I remember a couple of different regressions. So I do go to meetups and a lot of the woo-woo groups in Richmond, and I get around and stuff. So that's my disclaimer, all right? So there's a lot in my mind, and I'm very analytical, so I'm always trying to make sense of where did I get this from?
Yes.
And that woman right there.
Yes.
I had a regression. Okay, I'm so sorry. But I'm going to add something to what I experienced with her once. But I remember one of my regressions, and it was very out of the book. The person that did it like monthly as part of a meetup
Sure.
group, and it was very
Sure.
textbook. But I'd always get to a part where, for the young lady that was talking about off the planet, I'd get to a part where something or someone, and it was like a different life form made of some other carbon or silica. We're like, no, not going further than this. And I'll be like, I curse, I'm from Florida. I'm like, what, beep? And it'd be genuine emotional anger. And then I would stop myself and said, okay, now if you were way too invested in that, why
Yeah,
though? You know,
right.
why would it bring up something? So I like to have things that I like kind of make like a touchstone as to this is realer than I expected it to be. Where it makes
Yes.
sense, because if I'm just going along Pollyanna, then I'm thinking it's something from my subconscious. So
Right.
that brings me to a long time ago, there was another meetup with a similar name called Richmond Mind Body. And dear friend here had done a regression.
Uh-huh.
And I used to say I'm not easily regressed. So whenever I go to these things and it works, you know, someone else had been trying to push through to get regressions, and I would have blocks, but she had
Right.
done this closet. Carol, what was it called?
Carol works
Yeah,
in magic.
Yeah, and so it allowed me to relax. Now understand, I had also studied hypnosis and been certified with the
Sure.
National Guild and so forth.
Wow.
But she took the back door closet, and I remember it was a back door that has so many jokes in it. But
Yeah,
anyway,
right.
but I remember that it became so visual. And I remember that this was like the second time I was such an older, when I say being, I don't mean being, I mean, it was like a caveman or a prehistoric
Okay.
thing. And it was so live. Do you remember that, Carol, where I was looking at my hands? Because I was never able to always do, as they say, textbook, look at your feet, look at your hands.
Ah.
And I was thinking in my mind, what the beep, 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 add all the explicits. Why am I covered with this kind of hair? Why is it so damn cold? And, you know,
Yeah,
things
right.
like that. So I would
Right.
have to give my props to her methods of doing so. But
Yeah.
I also remembered when I was a weird sort of mammal prehistoric man.
Huh.
And in one regression, and I was surprised that I was there and I was in a tree protecting my babies,
Aw,
and down below
yeah.
were like maybe lions or some type of thing, and all I know is that we have to move from tree to tree. We're not going there.
Right.
And so I was like, ooh, one too many PBS or Nat Geo show. But because you do, I think if you don't do that, then you can start to question if you're a little schizo or crazy, but make sense of it. I think the jewel in all the research and all the colleges that are doing that, the jewels and the things that I pull out of that is when people are able to go back and research their ancestors or find
Yes,
something that says
yes.
this is true, or there's an experience or you go somewhere and you have a flashback. So
Sure.
it's all fantastic. And
Yeah.
I love when folks like you come and present
Oh, thank
this
you.
information, because
you so
it does
much.
remind some of us that we're not quite crazy, and to
Yes,
remember those experiences,
yes.
however or whenever we had them.
And I just wanted to mention to everybody, write all
Thank
this
you.
down. Keep a notebook. Thank
Yes.
you. Keep a notebook of this, because you never know when you're going to get hit, is what I say. Oh, that's why I'm this way, like she was explaining. And so anyway, any more questions? Well, I thank everybody. Oh, Carol, do you have some? I know you had something to say.
I'm blown away by all the questions, and it really makes me glad about this next book I'm working on, which is
Good.
about the cosmology of reincarnation. So I won't go into detail about that, except to address something about the ancestral memories.
Okay.
What we're learning now is that more than the biology,
All right.
that it's streams of consciousness. Some people call it soul, spirit, what have you. But when we think about our consciousness,
Yes.
is what is creating even the biology, even the color hair you have, you know, your height, your
Sure.
nationality, all of that. It's also creating that ancestral memory.
That's right.
So that's what I love about meditation. To me, regression therapy is just another form of meditation. It's a little bit more focused. And all of us have the ability to remember to go into those streams of consciousness, so we can answer all of these questions by doing that.
Yes,
So,
that's right.
yeah,
That's right.
I really encourage it.
Oh, great. Well,
And thank
you've
you for
helped a
sharing
lo-
your story.
Well, you've helped a lot of people, and I look forward to going back with you tomorrow. Eh,
Hi again. I hope that more of us will share our experiences and our wonderings. This is a rich conversation. Every now and then I feel upset that I don't have a better memory of who I really am and what my past has been, and wish that I could remember better and more clearly. But what comes to counter that idea is that the more I remember of other experience, the less I'm here now, experiencing
Right.
this experience
Exactly.
here and now.
Absolutely.
It kind of like it intrudes or sits it aside. So
Yes.
I've learned to kind of be more patient
Right.
and accepting
That's right.
of this current experience, because none of my past experience is ever going to go away,
Right.
you know, and I may at some past lifetime be able to recall that or whatever. I don't really know. I'm just living in the mystery,
Well, you
trying
know,
to be present.
you can be I didn't mean to interrupt you. Was that?
That's all right. I'm done.
No, you can get absorbed, so sucked in, so obsessed. And when I was writing during the COVID, I was completely obsessed with it. I'd get up at 5, I'd get up at 6. I would, forget to take my walk, didn't enjoy the coffee. It was just, you have to be wary of that, because we're here to enjoy life as much as we can and love and make a difference if necessary, but more than anything, to take what you've learned in this lifetime and embellish it. And I think, about going before you pass, when it's near or something, to write all that down. This is where I want to be. This is what I learned. This is where I'm going. And yeah, thank you.
So one of the books I've written was channeled by the Tara.
Oh,
And
uh-huh.
when I first met her, she asked me if I would go back and look at a past mastery.
Oh,
And so I did, and she gave me a technique how to do that.
very good.
And I never knew what I would encounter.
Mhm.
They look like jewels strewn across a landscape, and I would pick a jewel. Each one was a different color, and they had sort of facets. And I would go through the jewel into a past life and look at a way of mastery. So when you talk about past lives, you can say, well, yes, it's true. All we have is this moment. This moment is it. There's nothing else, just this moment. However, when we're trying to be a loveful person in the present, each moment, we can, we can learn from our masteries to help ourselves and help others, but we can also look at hindrances that we have now that were built from the past, so we can clear those out
Absolutely.
from ourselves. And in particular, fight or flight memories are stored in our etheric bodies. And so we carry our etheric, it's our physical body that is manifested from life to lifetime. And so people will have illogical fears, fear of childbirth, fear of water. Those are some very common fears because people used to get around by boats and they didn't know how to swim in we've all
Right.
drowned multiple times.
Sure.
So getting over that fear that can still haunt us.
Right.
And I had a very good friend, and she was
Right.
terrified of having a child or getting pregnant because she had died previously giving birth. And so, we don't want to be hindered by those illogical memories that get filed in us. And so there is some benefit to looking at our true nature, to unlocking that, opening that, so we can bring that to our lives and bring that to others. And so, yes, we're consciousness. We're begat by source. So each of us is source energy flowing through this physical form, but we're all the same energy. We're all one, truly. And when you talk about the quantum field and the future lifetimes, it is absolutely true that you can look into that quantum and you can say, okay, I'm going to build my life to this point, and I'm going to move it beyond this life and carry it forward. And so that there's a conscientiousness about that I want to be a certain type of person, and I want to keep building, I want to keep learning. And I'm a Buddhist, and so that's part of what the Buddhists teach, is that you're not only working for this life, but you're working for future lifetimes as well. And get it's kind of, they talk about the big picture, that's the really big picture, that you're also looking forward. But also, when you're talking about tapping into any of the magic, we might call it magic, or the good stuff, or the beauty, or the wondrous energies, we in order to do that, we need to move aside our conscious minds. So the conscious mind will say, what is that? That looks stupid. You're being, you're going crazy, whatever it might be. So we've been trained, our minds have been trained to work that way. And so we need to push them away in order to open ourselves to all that beautiful, whatever, magic, whatever you want to call it. And meditation is certainly the way to every day to stay in that place.
That was wonderful, very insightful, and we just have to keep on the path. Thank you so much. Any other questions? I think we're wrapping it up here. I have books up here, and I'll sign a copy to you. They're 20 each, or you can go on, they're on Audible too. These books are on Audible through Amazon. So, and it's written more like a historical romance, but there's a lot of action in there too for guys. So battle scenes. Thank you so much, Dan and Bill, for helping me out with this, and Martha. And I'll see you another time, hopefully. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Oh, Bill?
Yeah, just a quick reminder, we still have our
Raise the mic.
free book exchange going on. Not very many books this time, but they're at a little table to the right of this room exit door. So help yourself, take one if you like, and put out any that you may have brought, and next time, bring more books.
All right, so I'll close the Zoom for everyone, and we'll see you next month.